Should be good to go. Okay, welcome everyone to our first Parli team meeting. I'm Jolie. I am one of our Parli team captains, and I'm in charge of the IPDA events. Vishnash couldn't make it, but you'll see him in the future. And he's the other Parli team captain for WUDC/. Okay, so our agenda for today, I'm going to talk about Parli team a little bit. We're going to have everyone fill out the Let Us Meet. It's really hard to get people to do that. I'm going to talk a little bit about IPDA, try to be informative about WUDC and WUDC. We're going to have people a chance to ask questions, but if you have a question at any time, you can just raise your hand. That's fine. I'm going to talk about tournaments and how you can get started with Parli, and then we're going to give some examples of Parli. If we have time. Okay, first, here are our relevant people. Vishnesh could not be here today, but he is one of our captains for WUDC. I'm the captain for IPDA. We have our debate team president, Andrew, here, who will probably be sitting in on our meetings and speaking a lot. We have our vice president, Rashad, who was the Parli team captain last semester, who will hopefully be seeing a lot as well. And then we have our alumni advisor, Sean Greiner, who's really great. He's really talented in NPDA, and we're really grateful for all the advice he's able to give us. He will definitely be a resource that you want to use. Okay, and then I think that's IPDA debate. I'll talk a little bit about our Parli team first. So, parliamentary debate. Did any of you guys go to the info session? Okay, you all went to the info session. Great. You already heard me talk about parliamentary debate. So, kind of like I said, parliamentary debate is really good. Prep. I think WUDC is kind of similar in terms of prep. But it's really good because you don't have to spend a lot of time to prep. Instead, it's kind of more about how you can synthesize an impromptu argument or kind of speak a little extemporaneously. And it relies a lot more on kind of rhetorical skills and speaking skills, as well as resolutional analysis skills, at least in terms of IPDA, compared to other formats. So I'll just go ahead and get started. No, actually, I don't have everyone fill out the Let Us Meet. Should I do that now or at the end?
I'd say do it now.
Okay.
Because no one fills these.
Please go to Campus Labs, Discord, GroupMe, whatever. Fill the Let Us Meet.
Did all of you see the note on Discord and GroupMe asking you to fill out the Let Us Meet?
Yeah, just 10 minutes ago.
Great.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, so the thing there is it went out in the Parli team channel, not in the channel. And Parli team channel you can only view if you have like a member role, which you have to like join our roster to get on. And Emma has to like add you to Discord. So that's why you didn't see it like a couple days ago. It's also on the GroupMe.
Yeah, it's on the GroupMe. It's on it. Well,
has everyone been able to join the GroupMe? Okay, you have to like. There's a little pop-up where it says like tell us what the name of this student board is.
Oh yeah, I just did like
yeah. You're meant to just say debate. The only reason we have that is because we have a lot of bots trying to join, but they're not smart enough to fill out that question. They always just say like. But if you say something random, we will assume. So that's what happens. Could honestly make it just like. Are you a bot? Yes or no? And I'm pretty sure bots aren't smart enough to answer yes or no to that question. They'll put like some message that has nothing to do with it. So.
Okay. Well, so you guys do that. Whenever you're ready, yeah, IPDA. Slide. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and start talking about this. That's fine. So the way IPDA works is you start off with your prep time. So during the prep time is 30 minutes. The topics are announced, given 5 topics. You start striking one topic at a time. So the negative side strikes first, and the affirmative side, the negative side, the affirmative side, until you're left with one topic. That's what you'll do.
Do you want to do a demo, Emma? We can do a demo.
I don't have resolution.
I can just do like resolution A, resolution B, and resolution.
Sure. Yeah. So like, say, you want to be neg, I'll be half, I guess.
Okay. It'd be helpful if there was a marker.
Yeah, we don't have a marker.
Okay. In that case, it's a bit harder, but
You can go buy one from the
or we could write one on the IPDA
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Technology.
We love technology.
The whole
What are, should I just say resolution A, resolution B?
Yeah. If you want, you just copy and paste that.
I think it's $5 for a pack of sticky notes.
That's outrageous. That makes me want to just bring a Sharpie.
Oh yeah. Yeah, just.
Spite, yeah. So am I neg?
Yeah, so you should.
So I strike first. So let's say resolution E was really ugly to me and I didn't want to debate it. Like, let's say resolution E was just something I have no clue how to debate. I would say strike resolution E.
And
then now it's Emma's turn to strike.
Yeah. So let's say like resolution C was a really big policy, really big policy resolution, and I didn't want to write a policy today. That's the affirmative I would have. So I'll strike C, so I don't have to do that. I mean, you can do it.
Then it's my turn again, and at this point, I know it's only going to be one of these 3. So I really have to decide which of these 3. But you can be a bit strategic about this if you kind of have a guess as to what your opponent doesn't like. So, for instance, I know Emma doesn't like very philosophical resolutions, so I never bother striking one of those because I know she's going to strike one. But in a tournament, you don't have that luxury most of the time because you have no clue who you're up against. That said, schools have philosophy. So Mercer University loves policy-style resolutions. You're up against them, you should strike them. But they hate all other types, so you really don't need to strike them. So I'll strike D because I know Emma's going to strike me.
Because you're not going to strike what?
Nothing. I didn't say anything.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to A.
Surprise.
Just because
There you go.
I wanted a challenge.
And then now that's our resolution.
So then we're going to debate resolution.
Does that imply you only need to correct 3 topics?
You don't have
You don't
to
start
prep
prepping.
anything.
Oh.
So now that we know what the topic is, now the rest of your prep time, which some people like to take forever, but it's really annoying, so I suggest not, because that means you have less prep time. Now you have like 25 minutes-ish to prep the topic that you're given. So that's when you're going to start like researching your intention. You're going to start planning out what your weighing mechanism is. You're going to start, kind of like deciding how you want to run your case, and maybe even kind of trying to anticipate how your opponent is going to present the case, and coming up with some remarks. That's of course if you have time. So there's the timings and rounds. This is exactly on the slide. So the first speech is the affirmative construction. So whoever is defending the resolution is going to give 5 minutes of construction. What they want to do is they want to define the motion. Defining the motion is really, really important in IPDA because people will be really annoying and try to define it in a way that helps them and hurts you a lot. So you want to basically, have definitions for any word that you think can be contested at all. You also can define phrases or interpret the resolution in a certain way. So I'm trying to think of an example. No, I'm not doing that. An example that I did was that children should be able to decide if they want to get vaccinated or not, outside of what their parents said. And so my opponent was talking about a thing was like many people have anti-vaccinated parents or anti-vaccine parents, and children should be able to kind of decide for their own safety that they want to get vaccinated. So I kind of took that as well. Children can decide that they want to get vaccinated, but children can also say no if their parents want them to get vaccinated. So if you get small children who are afraid of needles and don't want to get a vaccine, you're going to have a lot of problems. You're going to have a lot of children like barring themselves from schools because they won't get a chickenpox vaccine, similar to that, like a polio vaccine or something. Just for making irrational decisions, as you know. So that's kind of like the way that you can interpret the resolution in a way that benefits you. Yeah, what's your question?
General question. What is IPDA?
This
International?
is a hilarious question
None of us know.
because literally every school has decided it stands for a different thing.
Oh,
The
nice.
Individual
official,
parliamentary
is International Public Debate System.
Oh,
However, most schools say
individual parliamentary.
individual parliamentary debate association. Most of them don't. Most of them don't use like. I think it used to be an individual parliamentary debate, and then they changed their name. But it honestly doesn't really matter. The DA just stands for debate association.
yeah.
The IP you could take I to mean intercollegiate, you could take to mean individual, you could take to mean international, and the P you could take to mean public or parliamentary.
It's kind of all over the place, and it doesn't matter, and none of us really know, and none of us really care. Yeah. So yeah, this is just a constriction speech. If you did, I'm gonna take this out because it's actually kind of not true. I'm gonna take right. So you just want to, yeah, kind of like build your case, and you want to try to unpack everything that you want to talk about. Because if you look at the times, like the affirmative only has like 6 minutes left to speak, so you don't really want to like spend those speeches giving more case, because that's when you need to be responding to what your opponent has been saying. So you want to try to unpack everything that's important to the round, and then the negative side is going to have 2 minutes to ask you questions about your case, if you're the affirmative. And then the negative side is going to have a 6-minute speech. It's basically the same as 1AC. You're kind of deloading your case. The negation is sometimes slightly advantaged by the fact that they only have to defend the status quo. So they don't have to unpack so much as the affirmative, but if the affirmative defines the resolution in a way that the negative doesn't like, then they want to fight it. And you want to spend time explaining why the way that the affirmative defined it is unfair, it's informative, it's not resolutional. I'll talk about them earlier, but
We're like Sean has sat us down and done like 2-hour workshops on resolutional analysis. Yeah. But all you need to know for now is, as the AF, you define the resolution a certain way. As the neg, you sometimes decide.
No, I don't like that. Yeah, and here's why the way that you did it is bad. And here's how I'm doing it, and that's why mine is better. But if the affirmative defines it in a way that you like, you can just say, I accept the affirmative's resolution of this. And if you like how they define half the resolution, you can say, I accept the affirmative's definition of this word, this phrase, but I don't agree with this, so I'm going to talk about why this part is bad. So don't waste your time if you aren't arguing with the affirmative. So you're kind of unpacking all your reasons why the affirmative case is not beneficial. I originally had don't do rebuttals here because that's what Rashad said, but I've had a lot of judges tell me that you kind of should, and you have more time.
And you want to see?
During 1 and 2.
You
So
don't
if
do
you have
rebuttal
time,
of the affirmative side in the first negative.
I think the advice there is more so.
don't waste your time doing all the rebuttals. You want to cover
your rebuttals
case.
should be your
You don't
contention.
have much time later.
Yeah, you'll have time later on. So if you have plenty of time, you can start doing rebuttals against affirmative, especially if one of your contentions that you prepared is a direct rebuttal of one of the contentions of the affirmative, then you can definitely say, let's say the affirmative had a contention that if we do this plan, then we'll save a lot of money, help we're running the budgets. And then say as the negation, you're like, no, it'll actually cost this much money to implement this plan. So that whole contention goes to my side because actually I have the economic advantage here. And then you talk about the rest of your, or something like that, something similar to that.
Yeah, I think that that's more of a cautionary tale in you should be using your case file in your
Yeah,
like,
don't start your 1 in C with a rebuttal. Do not do that. Give your case, and then if you find your essentially, and see if you can weave it in, but that kind of takes some practice. So that's fine. And then the affirmative has a chance to ask you questions. 2 minutes.
And in cross-examination, make sure you're asking questions, not just delivering statements.
Yeah.
Because I've had judges scream my ear off. They're like, you cannot just go up there and talk for 2 minutes.
Yeah, you
there
have
has to be a
ask
question in
questions.
there somewhere. And if the question takes 1 minute to ask, you better give them 1 minute to answer.
Yeah, it's very annoying, and I'm kind of guilty of this as well, about like basically saying a statement, then being like, well, so what do you have to say about that? And it's like, that's not a question. Like, that's just me like talking, and then saying, yeah, haha, I got you, checkmate.
Are you aware of the fact that
Yeah.
You come from
And I do that all the time.
Yes.
They have points of information.
Yes, POI.
It's kind of similar to a POI. The only difference is a POI can
now
can be a bit more. Yeah.
You don't interrupt. This is what you ask.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, I noticed that it's pretty different because first of all you have less time to prepare, and then you don't have much time. Word debate. There are 3 speakers.
Well,
I think in high school there's.
Oh,
I think it changes at the
yeah,
collegiate
and
level.
we'll talk about how WUDC is, because it's kind of weird. But we'll talk about that after we don't like you.
Okay.
But also if you're interested in IPDA, you should definitely do it, and you can do that. Do you have questions?
Oh no.
Okay. Does anyone have questions about that section?
The cross.
During the constructions or about cross? Does anyone have questions about that?
I have a question about the first actually.
This one?
Yeah, the one in do you also have to create a model for your case?
Create a model.
Because I mean, I don't have much experience, but one of the few things that they told me to do is that sometimes the affirmative side has to create a model.
Oh, like a okay.
In policy
Yeah.
resolution.
In IPDA, we call that a policy style resolution. It depends on the type of round, and the type of round is up to you. I will get to that. We've done whole 2-hour-long workshops on that, and it's complicated. Different people will tell you different things. Different judges will like a different thing. They'll kind of tell you what they like, but in some cases you build out. You're like, here's how I'm going to fund this. Here's how I'm going to enforce this.
And I've gotten a lot of comments about this. That in IPDA is kind of different from NPDA. In that, you don't have to have a very fleshed out case, or kind of not very fleshed out case at all. It's actually kind of terrible because I ran out of time. And I still won the round because I just started arguing about something else the opponent said and it got them confused. And the judges didn't really care.
You could win a round without it.
Yeah.
As long as you are good on your.
No, but it was a policy round. Or before I've done a really big policy and my judge said, this is too complicated, so you gotta be careful. And before I tried to say, you don't have any funding for this, and the judge is like, well, this is IPDA. You don't need policy stuff. So you need a policy, but it's loose.
In policy jargon, there's a lot of ways you can run around. One is called, a T-shell, where you spend most of the round talking about topicality and talking about the resolution, and you just try and argue that your interpretation of the resolution is such that you automatically, or something like that. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. Building a case is one really good way of doing it, but if you add too much detail, some judges won't follow it. Some judges will love it, some won't follow it. We'll have a session where we talk about reading a judge's paradigm and figuring out what arguments they're probably really not going to understand.
Okay. So this is very similar to LD.
LD, yeah, it's very similar to LD. It's very similar. It's extremely similar to LD. Basically, instead of having a value and a value criteria, you have a white. I'll talk about that later.
There's a lot of change in verbiage between.
But it's a lot of the same. This is
It's usually
if
the same
LD
thing, but
and PF. It's like if LD PF got smashed together. That's literally what it is. So I came from PF. It's like if you smash them. Oh yeah. I know all evidence. So you want to bring up all your cards by now. You can obviously make additional arguments against your opponent in rebuttal, but like this is when you want to bring up the rest of it. Then the affirmative has 3 minutes to do a rebuttal against negative. The negative then has 5 minutes to do a rebuttal. You also want to have, this is the last speech for the negative. The negative only has 2 speeches. So you also want to do kind of like a summary, not really a summary of the round, but you kind of want to like go through all the points and be like, okay, this is one point that I said, and here's why I won this contention. This is why, this is the point that my opponent brought up, and here's how I responded. That's why I won this contention. You want to do stuff like that. And then there's something called voters. So if there's one point that was really, really big that you talked about, and you think you won that point, you make it a voter. Or if you think that like the affirmative defined the round in a way that's really unfair, then you can say my one voter, like voter 1 is resolution analysis. I define the round in a better way. Voter 2, contentions, blah, 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 stuff like that. And that's like definitely something that we might not have time for today, but you'll definitely kind of like learn that. And then the affirmative has a speech. It's the closing speech, it's the last speech. And this is where they want to do your voters. You can do rebuttals, but a lot of the time when I'm affirmative, I spend the whole 3 minutes just giving a summary and giving my voters. And being like, okay, here's all the points we talked about. And here are my voters. And this is why I won. Kind of like that. Okay, so that's how the round is.
One. Is it only like one speaker versus one speaker, or?
Yeah, it's one. This is
IPDA
1v1.
1v1.
This is 1v1. There's also NPDA, which is 2v2. I have never competed in NPDA, but our alumni advisor really loves NPDA.
Our alumni advisor
He loves
won
NPDA.
2 state championships in NPDA, and he will not shut up.
He's excellent at NPDA. Kind of scary. Kind of a troll. But it's
It's
okay.
like if you mention the words NPDA, he will probably start talking to you about why you should.
Yeah.
If
so
you are
want-
interested, trust me.
If you want to do harder debate, do NPDA or do Worlds. The Worlds is kind of weird. It's really fun, but it's also kind of weird. So you can decide if you like that. And if you don't, you can do NPDA. Anyway, does anyone have questions about all the stuff that's on the slide before I talk about? I'll just talk about some more stuff because I didn't put anything with everything that's relevant. But do people want to ask questions about that? No? Okay. So, like Andrew was saying earlier, there are 3 types of rounds, basically. There's a value round, policy round, and a fact round. And you can kind of decide what you want the round to be based off of the resolution is. So like an example, this is just like a fun resolution, but sometimes you do see resolutions like that. An example that I did during a scrim is a Halloween style scrim. It was like, vampires are better than werewolves. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to weigh this on value, and I'm going to talk about why, like, vampires are more valuable than werewolves, for whatever reason. Or it's just like, value rounds are like kind of subjective, and you're kind of just like weighing, like, here's why something is better. Here's why something is like good. I don't know, Andrew, if you have like a better example of something that's a value round.
I think, like, for me, the most important lesson here is that it's not written into the resolution.
Yeah.
Like sometimes,
Moral.
yeah, sometimes it'll be obvious, but also like don't assume that the opponent is going to agree. So like you'll have a resolution that says something like, we should do this. Should being like there's a value to doing this, or doing this is better than doing this, or this is better than this, and you assume that's value because you're making like a judgment comparison.
Yeah. Okay, so I just thought of a really good example that I did in a round. That was like YouTube's move to like ban something about vaccine content from their platform was a good move. So YouTube's like recent policy to ban this content was a good move. So this isn't really a fact round because we know that they banned it. And there's not really a way to like say it is factually correct that this is good. It's like that's not really a fact. It means it's good. And it's not a policy because they already did it. They're not making a policy, so it's a value. Was that a valuable thing for them to do? And like the opponent was like, yes, because you're talking misinformation. no, because you're kind of like restricting a lot of information that doesn't align with the CDC because YouTube is a global platform. So you have a lot of information that would get banned even if it's correct or whatever. So it's like a really good example of whenever you need to consider if like something was like valuable to do. Not a fact, because you know they already did it. Can't say that it's factually correct and it's good. It's also not policy because they already did it. Here's a good example.
We will learn from Sean later about how to take a resolution that seems like a fact or a value and turn it into a policy.
And you don't have to.
Which you don't have to, but he is very good at it. I mean, it is a skill that will help you at some point. Because sometimes even after striking, you still won't like the resolution. You'll be like, it's really hard to argue that value. And then sometimes you'll say, okay, well, maybe I can make a policy on it. But we'll go into that. It would probably be confusing to go into that today.
Yeah. Then you also have policy rounds. Policy rounds are really straightforward, mostly. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Policy rounds is like, we should do this thing, and then you're like, yes, we should. Here's how I'm going to do it. Example that I did that I think, I can think of two really good examples off the top of my head. One of them that was really straightforward is that urban areas should offer free public transportation. I was like, yes, they should. Here's a policy about why they should offer free public transportation. Here's how we're going to fund it. Here's how we're going to make it happen. Another one that you can do that's like a little more creative was like, it was one that I did at Steve Hunt. It's like my last round. I think it was like the United States should take a more global approach to trespassing or to like stopping monopoly, something along those lines. I was like, okay, I'm going to say if this is true, then the U.S. should do more to stop big tech from becoming a monopoly. And here's the policy for here's why we should do that. Here's the policy for how we're going to kind of like curb big tech from becoming a monopoly. So that's like kind of one that's like a little bit more creative. Like Andrew was saying, sometimes you can also take rounds that aren't really policies and be like, okay, I'm the affirmative. If this resolution is true, then this resolution is true if and only if we should do this policy. If and only if this policy is beneficial. So here's why this policy is really good. And that can be advantageous because sometimes your opponent didn't prepare for that because it doesn't look like a policy round. Sometimes the judge doesn't like that. Sometimes the judge is like, this was so irrelevant. Why did you take a resolution about space travel and spend the entire time talking about nuclear energy? Which is definitely something I think that Sean talked to. Well, maybe not. He said something about space travel and it was like something about energy. It was like, you have to be careful, but that can help you a lot. Make fact rounds.
Like if we were to go into the number of tricks that defy what we're telling you, like we're telling you a basic set of ways of approaching debate.
Yeah.
Every rule we're going to tell you has exceptions. And honestly, it would probably be, it's so confusing to offer you a bunch of exceptions right after you. So don't worry if you could think of like a time when you wouldn't want to do that. They will exist and you'll learn skills and it'll come up in practice rounds. You'll be like, oh, that resolution's really tough and it looks like a fact and I don't know what to do. There is a way.
Yeah.
But we're not going to unload all that information on you today. Yeah. As much as I would like to, and as much as I like hearing things. Oh, but you can also do this. They don't need to know that right now.
Yeah. That's fine. Policy rounds, you kind of know when something is a policy round, you just don't really know when something is not a policy round, I guess. So like you can make a lot of stuff into a policy round. There's some stuff I think is pretty straightforward that this would be really good to write policy. So, and then if you're the negative, then what you do for a policy round is you argue so value is really straightforward. If you're the negative, then you argue that there's not value in something, or that the alternative, like the vampires or werewolves thing, has more value. If it's a policy round, then what you want to argue is that the policy is like more harmful than the status quo. You can also do fact rounds, which I think can be kind of easy. What's your question?
For value rounds, does like the app or negative set a specific value they're trying to uphold, or is
Yes,
it like?
I will talk about weighing mechanisms. I'll talk about factor rounds, but that's pretty much exactly what.
Okay.
So that's why I said it's kind of like LD.
Yeah.
The new fact rounds, I brought up this example. Kristen Sinema is a greater danger to the Biden agenda than Mitch McConnell. You're asked and you're saying, yes, it is correct. Kristen Sinema is a greater danger to the Biden agenda than Mitch McConnell. If you don't know what that means, if you don't understand this resolution, that's okay. I didn't know who Kristen Sinema was.
Strike
so
it.
I didn't know who
If you
Kristen
don't know what it
Sinema
means,
was
strike it.
until I got this resolution. But I won, so it didn't matter.
The nice thing about this though is if look, there are two resolutions that you don't understand. Just strike those two.
Well, I struck two that I didn't like.
Okay.
And I didn't know who Kristen Sinema was, but I was like, I'll just argue that Mitch McConnell is the worst, because that's really easy, because I don't like Mitch McConnell. But, yeah, I just have to argue that Mitch McConnell hates the Democrats more than anyone else, any other politician, or is more dangerous to Joe Biden than any other politician, which I think isn't that difficult. Yeah, so my opponent was arguing, yes, Kristen Sinema is a greater danger to the Biden agenda. If you don't know, Kristen Sinema is like a Democrat who argues for a bunch of these like conservative agenda items. And she's saying, yes, she's so dangerous because she's kind of like, one, she's advocating for all these items and making it harder to pass because the Democrats need this many votes. And even though she's a Democrat, she's not going to vote this way. So that's dangerous. And also, she's like splitting the party internally, which is also dangerous. And I'm saying no, that's factually incorrect because Mitch McConnell is like leading the opposition. So even if she's one vote, it's not voting for them. Mitch McConnell is leading all these people that isn't voting for them. And he has like more power, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. You get the gist about how that's a factor. How I'm arguing like, no. Actually, it's like kind of like a fact. I guess you can't really like say that's a fact, but you kind of get the gist. That's like, okay, factually.
The only spin there that you can make is if you try and define what's valuable about the Biden agenda, and therefore say, well, here's what's important about that agenda, and then let's compare that to these two people and decide which of those is closer to that.
I guess you could, but
honestly, spinning rounds is like
it's really hard.
Is like the most exclusively IPDA thing I can think of. Parli, it's a very big Parli concept of resolutional analysis and weighing mechanism, and it's my favorite thing to do. It's also Sean's favorite thing to do. So you're gonna hear us like talk about it a lot, but it's also like the least beginner-friendly thing for us to talk about. So I'm gonna try really hard to shut up now.
If you like that high, you could like spin a factor of value, or like spin anything into a category that you like.
I think so.
Yeah.
But it can be hard.
Well,
what Emma's teaching you to do now is to look at a resolution and try and understand what the obvious interpretation is, so that you can define it at all. Yeah. What we'll teach you later is how to like. We're teaching you how to set the table. I'm telling you later we're going to teach you how to like flip over the
table. I'm going to open these.
Is doing that bad for like and like?
That's a really good question, and the answer is I don't.
I'm opening
Depends on
all
why
of
you
these
do it.
so that everyone can
It's like
see
a
my
risky.
example.
Yeah, it's risky. It's risky because you're right. If the judge doesn't like the way you did it, they're just gonna be like, "That's complete BS." But there's some ways that some judges will like. We're gonna teach you those ways, but also we're gonna teach you like which judges will hate that and how to read that in their paradigm.
Yeah. If you are unsure if you can do something tricky, I would suggest not. I would like a lot of the time, especially if you enter the novice division.
If you play it safe,
if you go to the novice division, I highly suggest not doing this stuff because judges get really annoyed when novices are annoying. But when you get to varsity, people just want to be sneaky, but novices usually aren't very good at being sneaky, or the judges think it's annoying because they think novices should be like learning debate skills and not learning trickery.
It's just like brackets.
Yeah, there's novice. Is there JV in?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
no, it's
JV.
JV.
And there's also varsity, but I don't think anyone on our team is.
SB, no one's there yet.
Oh.
Well, I mean, depends on who you ask about. No, I think I'm gonna try and stop talking because I've talked far too much, given that this isn't my meeting. But I will say, in the novice division, if you have debated before and you have a basic understanding of like the safe way of doing things, and you just practice that out, you're gonna start winning a lot of rounds. And so we're prepping you to just go through the novice division and win some rounds. And after that, we're going to teach you all kinds of wacky stuff that you can pull in the JV division that will be like, will annoy someone, I'm sure.
Well, Sean is so much better at explaining all of this than us.
We're probably going to bring him in.
Because Andrew and I are low-key kind of like JV/novice debaters. But, so, we talk all about being tricky, but we're not really that tricky. Well, maybe Andrew is. I'm not really that tricky. I'm just like,
tricky,
no,
I just
I'm
don't
going to
have
be
the right to be.
straightforward because I think it's annoying whenever people are tricky. So, yeah. Anyway, I already talked about resolution analysis. You guys have questions about resolution analysis? It's kind of something that you need to practice, and we'll practice at that again. And then, yeah, weighing mechanisms. This is what I was saying about when you're going to find the right. I think it's easier for me to give you guys examples because it honestly, like these terms, I feel like don't really make a lot of sense whenever I'm just talking about them, but whenever I did them in a round, they make sense. So your weighing mechanism, you're going to outline like what specifically you will be debating. The way that this is different than the resolution is you're saying, okay, the resolution says this. I'm going to consider all of my points on this because you can't talk about every single thing ever created. So that's when you decide what is important and what you're going to be considering. Then you're also going to say, and then judge, I can convince you that this is true, whether this is more important, whether this is beneficial, then you have to vote for me.
In IPDA, you treat the judge like they're a baby.
Yeah.
You tell them exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. You label everything. You say, this is a contention. This is a rebuttal. This is a piece of resolutional analysis. This is a wagon. This is a vote.
Yeah.
If you don't, they may not write it down.
Yeah.
And then they just, and then you might as well not have said it.
Signposting is really important. One, it makes it easy because you kind of copy and paste the same format. Makes it a lot easier on yourself. And you're trying to organize your picks and make sure that you have all things in
One thing, like, is there like a suggested number of arguments you?
I would
bring
say
to
2 to 3. You can do one and make a really big argument. You have to be careful because that means your opponent only has to respond to one argument. You can do, so 3 is for like 3 small arguments, 2 is for 2 medium arguments. If you do more, you probably won't have time. Yeah?
How many people spread on the collegiate level?
I've never had someone spread on me.
Thank
If
God.
anything,
It's hard
I've
to
gotten
spread
the
an
most
IPDA.
comments.
It's
I've
really hard.
gotten the most comments about speaking too fast at Linear that I've seen, and I speak about as fast as I can. You won't see people spreading. And if you do,
It's hard.
like
It's hard to
IPDA,
spread really fast.
Oh, I
Where-
can't. I
where-
physically can't.
also like IPDA, judges don't like it when you spread. Like I said, IPDA is kind of supposed to be like about rhetorical analysis because you don't have time to practice.
Yeah.
And you have to just be convincing. And if you're spreading,
There's a
I don't
culture
think
that
you're very-
dislikes spreading, but also spreading is not just about how fast you do it, it's about just like the sheer number of arguments.
Yes,
Right? It's hard to do that in IPDA because
because
if
they're so
you
only have
dump
30
down
minutes.
so many arguments, you only have 5 minutes for speech.
yeah. How many arguments? You have 30 minutes to prepare. How many arguments are you going to prepare in 30 minutes? How many arguments are you going to prepare well? Because if you're just like writing down arguments, chances are you don't have any evidence.
Because also the neg doesn't have to like respond to all of those in their 1AC. The judge, if they don't respond to everything you said in your 1AC in their 1AC, and then you try and say in your next speech, oh, all that flows, the judge is just going to ignore you. They're going to
The
say,
judge
no, it
is just
doesn't.
going to be like, no, they didn't have a rebuttal. They have a 5-minute rebuttal.
Yeah,
They
the
didn't
judge will
do
just be like, that doesn't flow yet, because they haven't,
They haven't had a
that
rebuttal.
doesn't flow yet. So
Yeah.
there's not as much burden on you to get your ducks completely in a row.
It'll be okay. Oh yeah, we're talking about weighting mechanisms. So yeah, this is the first cinema. Actually, I don't think this weighting mechanism is really good, but this was like my first round at tournament. So, but it kind of like gives you the idea. So it's like, okay, so I'm arguing that Mitch McConnell holds more power and incentive to stop the passing of Biden budget, and the Biden budget is necessary for the Biden agenda. So if Mitch McConnell has more power and more reason to be harmful towards the Biden agenda, then you should vote for my side, because that means that he's more dangerous. Then all my contentions talk about, my first contention, well, I didn't have a headline. I kind of gave it a headline. Basically, so Mitch McConnell had a big seize on the budget that's more important than Kristen Sinema just saying a bunch of stuff about it. And my second contention was that kind of Sinema started away her power, so Mitch McConnell's more powerful because Republicans really like it whenever Mitch McConnell does stuff to Joe Biden, but Democrats don't. And Sinema's a Democrat. Yeah. So that's kind of my way mechanism for that one. For example, here was one that I did against Schaub. Yeah, the United States federal government should significantly restrict the use of microtransactions in video games.
It's kind of like saying, what?
I don't even know
you're telling the judge what you would have to prove, what you think you have to prove to win the right.
Yeah.
And you're telling everyone in advance, like, if I prove this, I win. Right? And then the reason you do that is so that the negative can either agree or disagree with that. And the negative can either say, yeah, I agree, if you prove that, you win, but you're not going to prove that. Or they can say, no, I disagree. You wouldn't win if you proved that, and here's why. So, for instance, I had a resolution that was technology should be significantly curtailed in the classroom. The affirmative said, basically, I'm going to define technology as the smartphone, but I'm just going to define the classroom as any educational institution. And by curtailed, I mean people shouldn't be allowed to use phones in classrooms. They shouldn't be allowed to bring their phone to school. And so their weighing mechanism was basically, if I could satisfy that it'll benefit children for them to not be allowed to bring their phone to school, I will have won the round. And I turned around and said, I agree that what we're discussing is whether or not it's a benefit to children to bring their phone to school. I have agreed with your interpretation of the resolution and your weighing mechanism. I didn't have to say that. I could have said, I disagree. I think that the weighing mechanism should be, should we use Canvas in the classroom? Like, because that would still be.
Canvas, delete Canvas.
Like, what I'm saying is the weighing mechanism is an opportunity for what the round is meant to be about. And if your opponent gives one that you think you can argue, you just say, I agree with the weighing mechanism. And then you argue what's left there.
Yeah.
So they've said, here's what I'll have to prove to win the round. And if you agree with that, you just go, okay, I'm going to argue that they can't prove it.
Yeah, I think this was a good example. I did this against Rashab. It was it was the one that I just said. My rating mechanism was about preventing gambling addiction. And Rashab, I think Rashab contested my weighing mechanism. He said no, because there's more to microtransactions in video games than gambling. Because if you consider like all loot boxes, then you have things that are like aesthetic packages, things that are like.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't play video games.
This is where you got to be careful.
Yeah.
If you leave too much out in the weighing mechanism, if you set up a weighing mechanism that you're trying to really sneaky, leave important things out, the opponent will say, you left out this huge part of the resolution. So what you're trying to do is design a weighing mechanism that captures the resolution and tells the judge what you're going to do to win. You have to tell the judge. If you don't tell the judge, they will not write down anything you're saying. They won't understand it because they have no clue what you're arguing.
Yeah.
And what Rashab does here is very clever because Emma says, "Here's a thing that's bad that we're going to tackle." Broadens it. He says, "Your weighing mechanism is too exclusive. You have to prove this other thing as well.
Yeah.
You have to prove this thing and this thing and this thing." He's just expanding what the app has to prove, and then he's saying, "Oh, and by the way, they can't prove any of that."
Was the loot? What type of round was the loot box resolution?
I think I made that a policy round because I said, here's a policy. We're going to make it to where you have to be over the age. I don't remember what I picked. I chose some card about gambling age, a bunch of states. I think it was 18. If you're above this age, or if you're below this age, you can't because it's gambling, and then you're like gambling below the gambling age, essentially. Yeah, that was my policy. And also, we're going to make people put warnings on the online store or whatever they downloaded that this is gambling, which can be highly addictive. Yeah, but it was I don't want to spend too much time on this because we also talk about worlds and we do other things. So, final notes. You can bring cards and arguments. You won't know what the resolution is, so it doesn't help you that much. But if you have some things that are really, really multi-purpose, bring them.
Oh, bring that before even knowing the.
You can. You don't have to.
And it has to be on paper.
Yeah.
Oh, it has to be on paper.
It has to be on paper.
Oh.
Parli's old school. They hate technology. You can't flow on a laptop. You
Yeah.
believe that? Your
You
tournament
can't
is
flow.
virtual and you can't flow on a laptop.
I've never flown on a laptop before, but not being able to, like,
You can't have your cards on a laptop.
yeah, that's.
In NPDA tournaments before COVID, you could bring a computer or a cell phone.
Are you,
As far as I understood.
so like writing evidence base, how do you get the evidence?
You can, in IPDA, use a computer during your prep time.
Oh, really?
You're not meant to bring it into you're not technically meant to bring that. It's confusing. So
I'm
this is
pretty
really
sure
confusing.
What you
because
can do, I think, is during prep time, you write down everything.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, this is my paper. Everything that's on this paper I can use.
Yeah.
Everything that's not on this paper, too bad, so sad.
this gets confusing
Yeah.
because
It's kind of
what NPDA did in response to COVID was they said you can now flow on a laptop.
Yeah.
Because we're doing a debate virtually, so and that you could bring in some of your cards on your laptop. You just can't bring in new ones during it.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to prove that. What they did when it was in person was you're in your prep room, you've got your paper, you can consult your coach or your box of cards or the I think maybe the internet, but you have to choose what to bring into the round after. Okay?
Yeah.
And once you've brought that in, you can't go back and grab it.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
The point being, you're not meant to be grabbing things from the internet during a round.
Uh-huh.
Ever. If you do that, it's hard for someone to notice, but it's very, very, very against the rules.
You shouldn't.
To the point that they don't want you flowing on a laptop so they know that you're not Googling.
Yeah.
If you flow on a laptop or Google anything, you will get some judges that are just convinced you're cheating.
If it's the first round,
Some people.
like one time I did it, and then they were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I literally just thought that you could flow on a laptop
Because it's kind of
And then
weird.
they're like, "Oh, okay, that's fine. Never mind. You're fine." Because it was a novice tournament, but
Yeah.
like,
You can also
You can also ask.
apply for if you have.
yeah, you can apply for
Yeah.
accommodations, or you can probably. Some tournaments do let you do it online, and you can ask
Some tournaments.
because
do,
UND Tom Preston was like, "This is dumb." They let
Yeah,
us-
but
they
Tom
let us
Preston
do
does
it.
a lot of things like that.
I know, but just ask, or
Yeah.
see if it's online.
Well, I'm just
But
talking
you have to
like,
be careful.
and I did Congress for like 2 years, so I had
Yeah,
a
nice.
bunch of like info on random topics because each tournament was like 6 to 10 different
Sure.
topics.
Yeah.
Could I use that on my computer in the prep?
I think you can
Yeah,
use it,
you
but
can.
I think technically you have to.
You have to write it down.
like
though.
yeah, like you could because like in your prep time you're allowed to consult like your whole library of cards, your coach, everything.
Yeah.
But they will get really annoyed at the idea of someone who can have the world at their fingertips during it.
Yeah.
Because that's not fair.
Like in there.
Yeah,
It's
you
really
have to write
weird
it.
though. It's
You
weird.
have to write it down, and it's really weird. But I mean, it's okay.
Oh, question: how did you get that cinema or McDonald like entire case? Like, did you write that?
Because I didn't drink prep. That was the
Because-
one.
yeah.
That was the one where they got mad at me because I thought that you could flow on a laptop, and that's why I never. All the other like docs that you see me pulling up were from scrims because the GT debate team doesn't care. GT debate team is like.
During scrims, we let people flow on a laptop. They changed that so people get
So
proper.
people
Here's
can
a question.
But I'm better
Flowing on
flowing.
a laptop, you mean just being able to use a laptop?
You can't
while
type
you
in
work?
docs during the round.
Okay.
Well,
You-
I can't because I'm dyslexic.
Okay. You can't. Basically, once the round starts, the only tab that you could be on is,
You can have a timer, and
You
you
have
can
a
have
timer,
like your
and you can be
tournament
on the what's it called?
video
The video.
conferencing. It changes.
I use my phone for a timer because I like to like look at. But
Imagine not having 3 monitors.
okay, yes.
Is what's it called Are tournaments in person or online?
They're online.
Almost all of them are online. There may be some in person this semester. They were planned, but basically everyone who planned one emailed me and said, like, we planned one. We have one planned still for February 27th in person here at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
It's the state championship for Parli. Everyone who said they were coming emailed me and said, what are you doing? And I replied and I said, what's that? I'm just kidding. I told them that we're still planning it in person now, and that we'll decide like by February or something like that, which is a lot closer than I
So
realized.
it's just like 8 days.
Yeah, it's a lot closer. Oh, another thing. Sign-ups for the first tournament of the semester end tomorrow.
Yeah.
I
think you want to.
Are we done with giving an IPDA over?
Yeah, I'm gonna do worlds, but go do that spiel.
Do we want to give people a moment to ask questions about
Yeah. I was
IPDA?
gonna say, do you
And
guys
then
want to ask
you
about
can
IPDA?
pull up the tournament on Discord and show people all the details, and then ask them if they want to sign up.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
if they don't sign up today,
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Done.
I'm gonna run to the bathroom.
Sure. Do you have any questions about the IPDA stuff?
Not like immediately right now.
Sure. I'm gonna pull up the Discord.
And that tournament has Worlds and IPDA, I think.
Okay. I'm trying to find my. What's in?
I don't know if Fishnesh is like
General.
up for that one.
What's the main difference between IPDA and WUDC?
Oh, Worlds is like 8 people.
It's really different.
Plus 3 judges.
So it's 4v4.
It's 2v2, v2, v2.
Oh,
Yeah,
wait,
that's collegiate Worlds. Yeah,
how do you do 2v2?
4v4.
Okay.
But you're ranked against the team on your side as well as the other team.
Okay.
Oh, I see. So you have like an opponent who's actually playing with you.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
just have to
That's cool.
you just have to outdo them. Emma and Fishnesh.
It's weird though.
It is
Like
weird.
you have to like be better than your teammates as well.
Yeah.
Like you want your teammates to do well because you need to beat the other team.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But you're also bad, like judged not only for what you bring to the debate, but also for how well you explain your side compared to your teammates.
Okay. This is. You can see this on the Discord, but I have it here. Information on our first tournament. It's going to be on the 28th through the 30th. I checked, and I'm pretty sure debate events are only the 29th. I could be wrong.
Which is just on Saturday, Sunday.
I have
Is
the,
it swing so people only have to do one day, or is it?
It's like this. It's kind of that. It's kind of done. Okay. Basically, how it works is on the 29th, you have 5 rounds. If you decide to compete, there's novice, JV, and then if you make it to the finals, then you have to compete on Sunday. If you make it to finals, you have to compete on Sunday. You don't, you're done.
That's only if they have enough entries to beat.
That's true.
You may well be done on Saturday.
You may only be doing Saturday. You may
In
be
fact,
doing
I bet like 90%
Sunday.
you're done on Saturday.
Yeah, well, Steve Hunt had a ton of people. That's what I'm saying. And it's so many rounds.
Yeah, but this
I
isn't
kept
Steve.
saying
There's
it,
another
yeah.
Parli tournament on the same weekend.
Oh.
So, that Sean sent us a totally different tournament. So it's not you're gonna be done on Saturday.
Sounds good.
One question. For like these tournaments, where are they held?
They're online. They're online.
Oh, okay.
I'll
This
bring
one is
Discord back
online.
up. So here's
It's on a
the
platform
invitation.
called Yahoo. We'll get you set up.
Yeah, we can send you if you want to compete at this one. We'll also have more. But like honestly, kind of like the easiest to learn.
Does this
You
have?
can talk at you as much as you want, but it doesn't really help.
This has NPDA, IPDA, and BP. Is BP on the Friday? Is BP on the
I
Friday?
don't even see. Did they drop it? No, I think they dropped MPDA, IPDA, and BP. No, I'm sorry. I mean MPDA and BP.
Does it say?
I
What does it
remember
say on the?
seeing
What does it say on the
MPDA
invite?
and now it's not.
What does
Friday
it
is
say?
ID. It looks like ID.
What does it say on the homepage, the tournament homepage?
You're proud.
It still says BP. Okay, if you go to registration. Oh, you need to log in. Okay. Hey, no, I'll log you in now. You need to know the login anyway.
It's
To
before
make
every.
single contact, I need to do it. And then let me try and type in the password. I may or may not have forgotten the password.
Excellent job.
Guess the password.
Okay, I'm going to pick the forward password.
This is on the recording, by the way.
Okay, well, I'm not going to read out the password.
No, I'm saying you saying I forgot the password.
You need to be logged into this. I'm sorry I didn't do it earlier.
That's fine. No
I
worries.
was going to log everyone in.
Okay. Yeah. Well, while that's happening, do you guys want to ask about IPDA? That's my slide is wrong. It says IDPA. I think. No, I got that. That's not my fault because I copied and pasted that. I'm so sorry. I'll fix it. But
Is Speedfire what every collegiate tournament uses?
it's that or forensic.net.
Yeah, every collegiate tournament uses a different platform. Very annoying.
Unfortunately,
Makes your life.
we don't have Tab. Tab is good.
Yeah, I don't think IPDA uses tab like that at all.
A few other categories do it.
Policy.
Policy uses Tab. Oh no, I can't tell you not to do policy. If you do LD though, you'd probably like this.
I did 1 year of LD and 2 years of policy.
Yeah. Okay. We might also be doing Congress at some point. I think we're trying to do this one tournament that's Congress because Rashad, who's the VP and was the IPDA or was the Parli team head, loves Congress and he's so good. So
I'm going to turn off the monitor for this because I need to go put the password in.
Okay.
And if I stream all of our software logins, including the potential accounts, to a bunch of people, I'm going to feel.
This one's not getting recorded. This one isn't streaming.
I know, but I don't want to be like, hey everyone, do you want to log into our account? And I think you can now log into that. And then close out because I don't want to accidentally stream it. And then you're logged in.
Great.
So now if you go you'll have to click on the link.
Just go back.
Yeah, you can go back because I won't forget it. And hit registration. Then hit will you attend and say yes. Say yes.
How many people are on the blue teams?
I don't know.
New York account?
I don't think anyone. I think we're just using it for recording.
After dinner. Yeah, they have.
They still have BP on there?
It's probably
Oh, they only have JVB. Oh, but Vishnesh can't do. I don't think we can do BP because Vishnesh, I don't think.
Yeah, if you guys want to do BP, you can.
I don't.
But you need 2 people. But I don't think that's gonna happen this tournament. We'll have more tournaments. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
are you guys interested in doing IPDA/NPDA? No, I can't tell you very much about it.
Yeah.
The tournament.
Probably not.
It would just be Saturday. You would be able to compete. Emma, are you going to compete?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and enter yourself in. Just. Yeah. See, they call it public.
Yeah, I have a conflict on Saturday.
Really? That's fine. Junior.
And then you have to hit. You have to hit save or update entries. Otherwise, it'll forget because it's old. Now go to.
Are you going to compete?
I want to do OO, but I have classes on Friday. So.
You want to do IPDA? Do you want to? We can also do BP.
You and me do BP?
Sure. I think that'd be really fun, actually.
Is it on? Is BP on Saturday?
I'm not sure.
Put us both down for novice. No, we have to do JV, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, put us both down for JV.
Okay,
You're gonna have to
so like
delete.
draw myself and then
It's
add up.
mostly high school.
Yeah.
It recently got recognized by like it's like mostly high
Which
Congress.
CPFL or Congress?
school. I don't think it's that much on the.
Okay, then just hit update. Now go to view your invoice.
Okay, where is it?
Yeah.
Go hit return to tournament page. Then go to current invoice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have an uncovered entry fee.
Why am I still in IPDA?
Oh, make sure you drop that. Update your entries.
I was like,
Dude, I said drop.
Yeah, you have to hit update.
I did. I
Okay,
dropped
yeah, try-
myself and added us to the same
now it's like picking up. But it's just at the moment the only format they ever use.
This uncovered entry.
I guess it's also like the one probably makes more sense to start with, you know.
Hey, how many Worlds tournaments did you do?
Me? Oh, personally, I only did one. Which is actually wasn't a tournament, it was a championship. It was they started. It was the first year they ever did it.
Yeah.
And it was just Italian debate championship. It was just like
Okay,
I don't know, 60 or even more. Well, pretty much all the teams.
I can't log you into the debate
And,
email yet because
it was like actually
about it. I have like,
Do you have your computer?
I have to talk to you. I have my computer.
you know, there were
I'm gonna ask. They give you a computer and you send an email to the tournament director.
stage,
Yeah.
you know, and then there is
program it's
like
going
the
to
first
stage. Would it be possible to waive all
phase off. It was online and it was the same
case? Yeah, hold on, I this.
It was on computer. How they would,
Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna hit download all over. Print this invoice,
Yeah.
you're gonna save the PDF, and you're going to immediately email it to me, and you're gonna say finalize invoice, submit to the bill.
right?
Yeah.
But
That's the process.
stop.
Am I doing this right now or can I talk about it?
You can do it after the meeting.
So I just have to email them saying that we're experimenting with money breaks?
The rest of it,
So
you might say, oh, I know because I know this. And of course, like there were people in your preparation room
email them.
who control you. And we were because the judge enters the hall, and we were just like discussing about stuff, you know. And once we were almost at the end of the half hour, that judge was saying, actually all three judges coming to our virtual director and are like, okay, now it's not just accusing us of like cheating and such things, but generally one judge heard the
Okay,
voice,
guys,
like he thought that we were communicating with our coach, which was absolutely not true. So we're like, and they started like accusing the first speaker, which had like to start, like they pushed my question. Of course, it was all false.
okay, everyone.
And at the end, they.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about worlds now.
Okay.
Sorry for the breaking.
No.
But yeah, so how worlds works is it's a 2v2 v2 v2. So basically there are 4 teams of 2. It's kind of confusing. There are 4 teams of 2. The 4 teams are the opening government team. You have the prime minister and the deputy prime minister. The only thing that means is that the prime minister speaks first and the deputy prime minister speaks second. Titles don't mean anything. And it's not like one person is like in charge. It's just called that because it makes more sense for government, I guess. And then you also have the closing government, which is a whole nother team, which is going to be the member of government, which is your first speaker, and the government whip, the second. That's the government team, and that's made of 2 individual teams. You also have the opposition team. You have the opening opposition, which is the leader of opposition, first speaker, and the deputy of opposition, second speaker, and then you have your closing opposition team, member of opposition, first speaker, opposition whip, second speaker. And essentially how the speech order works, I didn't write this.
You want to switch the slide on the recording?
Unfortunately, I didn't make a slide. I copied and pasted this from a other.
Here, you could just copy the Google Doc and access it up there. You're logged into Google on that.
There we go. Now this is on recording. And the speech order is you have your prime minister, who's opening government. You have your leader of opposition, which is the opening opposition. Then you have your deputy prime minister, opening government. You have your deputy of opposition, who's the opening opposition. Then you have your member of government, who's the closing government. You have your member of opposition, which is closing opposition. You have your government whip, which is the closing government. You have your opposition whip. That's your closing opposition. So I'm going to explain this real quick. Basically, this is the order that everyone speaks. What's next to your name is what team you're on. So if you have government, you're arguing one side of the resolution, you're arguing affirmative of the resolution. If you have opposition, you're arguing against the opposition. However, you have one partner on your team. And so these two people on our team, these two people on our team, these two people on our team, these two people are on the team. So basically, how Vishnesh likes to describe it is it's kind of like Congress. It's kind of like Congress in a way, in that you're arguing the same side, but you want to be better than everyone else is arguing your side. Except
so
for your
weird.
teammate.
Like,
And you
to
don't,
me,
yeah.
It's like
really kind of
crazy.
weird.
Why is it like 4v4?
It's really weird. And you don't want to contradict saying people that are arguing your side. You just want to argue better.
Okay. But like, aren't the closing government are of the same team, right?
Yeah,
like,
so closing government is on the same team.
Yeah.
And they're arguing
But
the same
their
side.
arguments kind of depend on like the work that's being done by the
So I'll explain that a little bit in a moment. But that's the speech order. I think the speeches are 5 minutes, but I don't remember that off the top of my head. I'm really sorry. I thought I wrote that down, but I didn't.
Okay.
But Vishnesh will probably explain this when he is able to come, and he is way better. He's so good at
Is this Worlds or British Parliament?
Okay, so university level Worlds is British Parliament. But university level Worlds, i.e. WUDC, World Universities Debate Championship, is different from WSDC, World Schools Debate Championship.
Oh my god, these acronyms are just messing
Yeah,
with my
the
head.
acronyms are annoying and they keep confusing, so
But
if you get confused by the acronyms.
Worlds as in like the concept of world debate
Okay.
encompasses both university and school level. The collegiate version is BP.
Okay.
Yes.
But both of them have the same philosophy, which is they're very different from the standard American approach to debate. And unlike in IPDA and in policy, you're not going to be like haggling over the definition of the list, as far as I know.
No, absolutely not. This one, you don't haggle the definition, because it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever done public forum. I don't think either of you have, so it doesn't matter. You don't argue about the definitions, and you don't do resolution analysis. As far as I know, IPDA and NPDA are the only formats that are really heavy on that, and I think LD is like a little bit, but not as good. It's not, you don't base your entire case around resolution analysis in any format that I know about, other than IPDA and NPDA. And you especially cannot, you still have to define terms, but it's not like as bad. And you especially cannot contradict the other team that's arguing the same side as you. You can't say like, they made this argument, but that is wrong. Or you can't say, well, they defined the argument this way, but I want to define it this way. No, you're like, in theory, you're both the government team. And if the government starts contradicting itself, cut it out. Yeah. You just want to basically outdo them.
It's pretty similar to
It's very similar to Congress.
The concept.
Yeah, the one that I did.
Yeah, it's very similar.
You're against us, like somebody that's on your side of the.
Yeah. So Congress is all about getting ranked first. So whoever is the best speaker makes the best arguments and uses what is already on the plate.
Do you think Rashad would like that?
Yeah.
I
I mean, it's so cool and interesting, like, cause I want to try what
Yeah.
it feels to be like actually an opponent of somebody that.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Cause I come from debate where it's like one team and like this team strategies and everything, you know, it's like, okay, each one has their own like role.
Yeah.
But here is like, okay, yeah, we're
What's
friends.
difficult is
but you're
that
actually
you
against
can't
each other.
really strategize with the people, with the other people in government, nor do you want to. And I'll talk about that. It's kind of weird. Oh yeah, let me talk about POIs first. The first and last 30 seconds are protected time. So no one can ask any questions like POIs during the first 30 seconds or the last 30 seconds. Whenever you ask POIs, you have to ask them to the other side. So like if I'm opening government and I'm giving a speech, the closing government cannot ask me a POI. Only the opposition can ask me a POI. And both opening opposition and closing opposition. Opening opposition usually asks opening government, but you don't have to. And if people aren't asking POIs, if the other side asks them, like literally, it's fine. You can ask POIs. It's recommended that you take a minimum of one POI, assuming that people ask you. Like I never had anyone ask me a POI, but I think we take a maximum of 2. They take time.
And
Also, make sure that you're done like with your idea before you do a POI. So don't stop mid-sentence and be like, oh, POI. Finish what you're saying, and then say, okay, yes, what's your POI?
Is a POI like, so
It's a question.
it's a 5-minute speech and someone raises their hand to ask a question during that speech?
Yes. So then you like finish what you're saying, and then you're like, okay, yes, what is POI?
Yeah.
Don't
Imagine
ask a
someone
long POI.
smashed
so that's
cross-examination into your speech.
Okay, yeah.
Like, instead of being asked questions, like, you have your speech and there's a time for questions, you have your speech and a time for questions, and they're both happening at the same time.
Yeah, okay.
It's really easy to get intimidated when someone interrupts you with a POI, and it's really hard virtually because you have to raise your hand virtually.
Usually they say ever turn on your camera, ask a POI. Unfortunately, sometimes you don't. And it's really annoying.
Online debate.
Yeah, you want to basically though, like, you don't want to take so many POIs, but you want to ask as many as you can.
Yeah.
And like literally, like every 30 seconds, you can like try to ask a POI, and the team can just say like, no, we're not gonna take your POI. You don't have to take the first POI. Like, the person who will not be speaking next. Why? I'm sorry, I wrote this down in Vishna's song. I don't. Oh, I think it's like.
So
if you are speaking next, you want to be prepared, and your opponent will be asking POIs. So that's I'm sorry, not your opponent. Your partner will be asking POIs when you're playing.
Yeah, same with Word or
Yeah.
like the POI part is pretty much the same.
Yeah. And then if you ask the POI, use the response. Don't just ask it to waste their time. Make sure that the POI is actually helpful. Goal speaking. Argue why your side is right. Argue why your side is unique. You want to defend the resolution. You also want to say why your side is more unique than the closing government. So you want to, the opening government or the opening opposition. The opening team wants to develop as much material as you possibly can. You want to make as many arguments as you can. This is kind of different than IPDA and WUDC, in which case, like, you don't want to have too many arguments because then it gets difficult. This one, if you like don't make an argument that's like really good, then the closing government can run an extension, and if they do a better job than you, then they're gonna rank higher than you. So you want to make like a lot of arguments. And
I'm
then
curious how similar this is to.
This is incredibly simple.
I'm very
it's
curious
very
because if it's very similar, we should get Rashab started with
What?
Rashab.
What's Rashad to do with Vishnesh?
Well, because Rashab is always saying like, I hate that I have to interpret the resolution, but
You don't have to.
BP, you never.
What is? What's the prep time like for this guy?
Yeah.
I think it's 15.
Okay,
It's
so
super
hang
short.
on.
It's
It's
almost
down-
like completely.
It's 30 minutes. I'm sorry. It's 30 minutes.
But you don't prep with your teammate. You don't prep with the two
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
teams.
So you
are
could
you
have
allowed
two
to-
different strategies, and then
Are you
they
allowed to-
open team starts. And then you have to change
The
it.
internet, yeah.
Oh my God.
So I think it's like the same as IPDA. You can use the internet to prep. You cannot use the internet to prep.
it's a
As far as-
that one's
Opening
tough.
government's so much harder.
Well,
That's like
the thing is, and I'll talk about it a little bit. So like the opening government, you could go there. Closing government can either be really easy or really hard, depending on how good the opening government is.
Exactly.
And that's also like two things. If the opening government is trash, then you basically have to carry the case. So you have like that burden, but also you have the benefit of that it's really easy to run extensions. If the opening government is like so good that they cover every single point and do better than you ever could, then you kind of don't have anything to say. So you just have to be really, really good at making rebuttals against the other team, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's like beneficial to have like a medium good opening government, or if your opening government is bad, or if your like opening side is bad, then you hope the other team is also bad. So it's like most beneficial for you to be good and everyone else to be mediocre, and the other team to be mediocre. Yeah. So so what you do is you run extensions as the closing team. And you want to show like why what you are bringing to the argument is unique from what the opening government said and why you deserve to win. So you want to, if you can, the best thing to do is to make new points and make sure your points are better. So like a good example is if the opening government, hang on a moment, I'm going to see if I can get the motion was that this House would adopt a 4-day work week. Actually, I don't think this one was as good.
I remember.
This one was the best one. So this one was, the motion was the media has promoted more panic than they have served the public good in their coverage of the Omicron variant. We're closing government. So what the opening government said is that their first point was that the public officials aren't causing the panic. So I'm sorry, the other team wasn't very good. So it was kind of easy for us on extensions. But I think this is like a good example of how you can like make extensions that encompass your opponent's case and make it better and also provide new evidence. So their points were like, okay, the government officials aren't promoting panic. So all the panic is caused by the media. So when you see panic, you can assume that the media is at fault. The economy is feeling stressed because of Omicron variant, and that this reporting negatively impacts mental health. And then what we talked about is we said, like, yes, this is all very important. And here's like kind of an overarching reason why the media is causing so much panic. The media causes so much panic because they don't have a lot to report on Omicron, because there isn't very much information. As you can tell, this was a while ago. Now we have more information on Omicron. Back then, that was like a reasonable thing to say, and that they're reporting a lot of speculative information to cause panic, so that people will have more watch time and they will have money. This gives a reason for why all this stuff is happening. And our opponents couldn't prove that the fact that they're doing this and this is why is false. That was a really good exception. We also said, like, yeah, the economy is important, but we also have like a big point that this is causing like a lot of like racist sentiment towards South Africa. And here's a bunch of evidence about why this is like kind of tied to racism, and it's like tied to cyclical media coverage that adds to racism, like you saw with like violence against Asian Americans. We also gave a lot of other examples, but that wasn't even about COVID at all. But I think that's just like a good example of how you can add extra contentions that encompass your partner's case and provides a lot. The next best thing to do is to provide a neat rebuttal. So like if the government team doesn't really provide a lot of rebuttals against the opening opposition, then you want to provide a rebuttal that kind of like destroys them. It just like destroys the opening. Yeah.
Do you use like, or when you're talking about like your case, do you have like cited sources?
Yeah. So it's like similar to IPDA in that you can use sources. You don't have a lot of time to prep, so it's not like public forum and policy to where if you don't have a source, then you toss out the point.
Okay.
Because like, let's be real, how many cards can you get and write a case?
Exactly.
Some, but like not a lot, so it's not super card heavy.
Okay.
But you still want to have some because if you just don't have any, then people are going to be like, okay, whatever.
I feel there is also like a lot of like a good advantage having some knowledge before, like being knowledgeable about topic is like big
That helps
advantage
you a lot.
as
That
well.
helps you a lot. That's for sure.
And you're given the topic 30 minutes beforehand?
It's like kind of similar to IPDA, except you don't rank as far as I know.
Yeah.
As far as I know, they say this is your topic.
No, yeah, they just give you.
They just give you the topic. Too bad.
But like,
But you don't.
I
You
think
don't
the topic
interpret it, so it doesn't
the
matter.
topic matters a lot more than
Oh, yeah.
The
like-
topic, it matters when you're choosing it, because then you can like troll someone. Here, you don't really troll based off the topic.
And then can first speaker for like opening government ever like rank first? It seems like a very difficult thing to use other things.
Well, you want your team to rank first.
Yes.
So, like, even if like the prime minister isn't as good as the deputy prime minister, that doesn't matter. Your team can still rank first. Like, it literally doesn't matter. And the opening government, so like I said before, like the opening team has the advantage of they have first pick to make all of the arguments. If the closing team is just saying the same stuff the opening team said, then the opening team is going to win. Also, they have less to respond to. The judges are going to be like, opening government, you didn't like respond to what the closing opposition said, because you can't respond to what the closing opposition said. So like, you have the first pick and you have less to respond to. You have the burden of making a lot of arguments. Same for opening opposition, like you have less that you can respond to, but you have like first pick of making all the arguments you want, and if the closing opposition just says the exact same thing as you, they're not going to win.
Can both sides, so can second teams, the opposition, the two closing ones, can they bring in new information?
Yeah, you can, definitely. Because
Even
that's why you're running a sentence.
Closing
You can bring
opposition?
in.
Even the closing
Yeah,
opposition.
so the only people on the closing team that can bring, why are these on, whatever, it's fine. The only people that can bring new stuff is the member of government and the member of opposition.
Oh yeah, okay.
Because the whip is like,
That's what-
basically, the whip is the last speech.
Yeah,
They're
that's right.
summarizing the round,
Okay.
and
Like a
they're
reply
also
speech.
like making all the rebuttals and talking about why they won and why they not only did their side win, but they were the best. Whip is the hardest. Whip is like the hardest position to be.
Is it the one like where you take a much more relaxed approach and you act like a judge, after the debate has happened and you just say, okay, this thing.
I think it is
we
kind of
want.
like that. You're
It's
summarizing.
You're saying,
Yeah, so it's
here,
very
you,
similar to
you
the
basically,
reply speech.
yeah, you give them a summary of the round and you paint it in your favor.
Yeah.
You say, these are all the points brought up.
Yep, okay.
Here's all the stuff that we
I know what
responded
It's
to.
also
Here's all the
similar
points that we
enough
made.
to your last speech in IPDA in the sense that it's not quite the same, because in IPDA you will potentially still make some new arguments and respond to some points. But it's important that you summarize everything. In IPDA they're called voters. Every point that's happened and how it flows in your favor. You're right.
Because
You're summarizing
in Ward High
exactly
School,
what's happening.
in Ward High School, what happens is that you can do the reply speech with like a shorter speech of 10 minutes, and you do that in this way. So there are many ways you can do it. You can do it in a more chronological approach. Okay,
Sure.
First argument we won because there is then the other approach with these, which is with flashpoints. So you say this debate was about these 3 flashpoints.
Yeah.
The most
yeah.
important was this one.
Yeah.
We won this one because you don't
That's
really,
exactly
you're not
what you do.
aggressive while you do it.
Yeah, you're not making arguments. You're
You're
summarizing
just
it
saying,
in a
okay,
way.
the debate is over, but
Yeah, yeah.
now
The debate
it's
is
clear
over.
that we won because we did it.
You're explaining why what everyone said, why you won out of whatever. Member of government is also like slightly difficult because you have to like give basically the entire case for your personal team. The thing about the opening team is like the prime minister can give like half the case, can like spend their whole time doing a case, and then the deputy prime minister can spend half the time giving case and half the time.
Yeah, no, I was looking up if they're on it or if there was
There's half they can spend half the time giving the case and half the time giving a rebuttal. Don't give more case. Don't give more case. Yeah, anyway. That's about giving unique arguments, giving unique rebuttal. So these are things, just to recap, this is about what you want to do is closing, right? Extension. You can also use a unique rebuttal as an extension. This is not as good as giving a unique argument in your favor, but if the opening government doesn't really respond, I'm assuming that you're the government team here, but it works the same for the opposition. The opening government doesn't really respond to what the opposition is saying in your closing government. You can just like make rebuttals against opening opposition and be like, yeah, here's the extension that we ran. Our extension was all these rebuttals that we gave. This isn't as good as making like new points, but you can. If your opening government is really, really good at giving points and they spend all their time giving points and you didn't prep for any of this, that's okay. Or if both those things failed and the opening team is really good, then you can just develop one of the opening points better. Because keep in mind, the opening government has like a limited amount of time that they can speak, and they made every single point that you can think of. Chances are, some of them they didn't explain very well, and you have either new evidence or you have like more like sub-points about that argument, so you can develop that better. Yeah. It's not as strong, so try not to do that. But like that's not, you can do that, but you only want to do it if you can't bring in any new argument.
Yeah, I actually have a question. I'd like to talk about it later. So I feel like the way that judges rank you and decide who won is by each speaker, right? It's not really about the way one side argues, like which arguments stand, at the end of the.
That does matter, but like also I think speaking matters a lot. It's similar to Congress.
So if it's like you're ranked by like position team, so you're presenting instead of like say IPDA or like LD, which is you have to win the round. This is more of a presentation.
So like in Congress, if you just like go up and give a speech, it's the exact same as what like the other people on your side said. Why would you rank high? You're not even coming up with anything original. You're just saying the same thing everyone else.
If you develop their
but if you're a really good
strategy is not really as important.
Strategy? Strategy.
When I think about strategy, I say, okay, if I'm the closing government, you just told us that it's not really the best option to develop what the opening government said, right?
Yeah.
Well, probably like what they always told me in board school instead was that if you're like the second, third speaker, you really want to keep the thread that the opening government
so it's the strategy is different because the thing is in world schools I know some about world schools. World schools, you're on the same team as the people that gave the original. Here you're not on the same team. So you want to make your own arguments. Like why would you help them?
Exactly.
You want to make your own arguments that are like really good for your side. But you can't. You can do that if you want.
Yeah, no, this is like Congress, but with a partner. So like every once in a while we would have like me and another person from
you make a block with your school.
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing as that, and then it's just Congress, but
it's really similar to Congress, except you don't get appointed. It's like
you
don't write bills, you don't get appointed.
And then you get you are set a position like when you speak instead of in Congress.
Yeah, you don't get to pick.
In Congress, no, people fight to speak first or second.
Yeah, I know. I did Congress at like regional.
Yeah, because it's easier. You don't you're more free.
Yeah.
Well,
it's more like you're not like your performance does not depend on what the opening was.
I will say that there's a huge scope. If if you develop a point, like an extension, if you take a point and you found something new and interesting to say about it, it's going to stick on the judge's
Yeah,
mind.
that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
that's
But what
fine.
if you like spend all
Or
your
you
prep
just
time
give
on an
new
argument and the opening argument just like explains that argument so well that it's almost useless.
Yeah.
It just depends on the quality of the debater. Like the first speeches are way like there's less of a difficulty cap. Meanwhile, the WUDC can be the best debaters and get the best crystallization.
Yeah.
But it is more difficult.
Like I was saying, like no matter how good you are, you have the same amount of time, and it's still limited. So like even if you're like so fantastic, like, even if the opening is so fantastic that they give every single point, like they just don't have time to develop every single point as much as you can. Yeah.
Should we tell them about GPDA because it's the only other tournament we have on the calendar for Parli?
GPDA, which stands for
Georgia Parliamentary Debate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So February 27th, we have another tournament which is slightly further away. If you would like to attend, it would be good to know sooner rather than later. This will be IPDA or NPA, but you'll probably want to do IPDA. This will be like the coolest tournament ever because it will probably be in person. And it'll be here, which means you don't have to go anywhere and you get in-person experience. Also, you're going to go up with some of the best judges you'll ever get. You will get the most insanely good feedback you're ever going to get. This is a really cool opportunity for an in-person tournament that isn't hard to attend. So be useful to know that. I think our deadline for entries is like, I put it on the invite, but I can't remember where I put it.
We're running the tournament. We don't need it.
Well, I disagree with that. We have a pretty exciting event with that, so it would be very, very good to know if anyone wants to attend, and if you do want to attend, the way you do that is you direct message Emma or message the Parli team channel and just say, I would like to attend DPI, which is Sunday, February 27th, be the whole day, and it will be exciting and fun. You know?
The IPDA, World, all of them.
Just IPDA and NPA. There's no worlds.
Okay.
And as Emma said earlier, we have this tournament every weekend. You guys wanted on the Saturday, you didn't have a conflict, you can sign up for Worlds or IPDA.
If you want to sign up for Worlds, you have to do JV.
Yeah, but Vishnesh or Rashab might want.
Yeah, no.
If you're
Vishnesh
interested, just put it on the Parli team channel.
and Rashad could.
Vishnesh, yeah. No.
Vishnesh could do open and Rashad could.
But if you are interested, like if you wanted
Yeah.
to do it with Rashab, who's done Congress, just put something on the channel and say I'm interested, and then we'll try and connect you after.
Yeah. I just can't this weekend because I'm doing advanced stuff.
No problem. Okay. I have to run, but that's fine because this is Emma's meeting. I'm sorry that I've hijacked this meeting. I may or may not have spoken a bit too much. And y'all will decide your next meeting time. Just let me know at the exact meeting.
I'll do it.
And we will write you guys a big tournament calendar and maybe a workshop calendar at the exact meeting, which Emma will share with you, which you guys will have input on. And make sure to fill out the Let Us Meet Everyone, please, because if you don't fill that out, there will
If you don't fill it out, then I'm going to pick whatever time I want, and I can't promise that it will be good for basically.
I was going to put it at like 3 a.m.
Yeah. I'm going to be like, hijack gets out at 10 p.m. Let's do debate at 10 p.m.
I mean, honestly, that'd be the safest time for my schedule.
Yeah. I mean, you know, but it's also let us meet so that I know the time.
Yeah, and you may see me here again, you may not.
You probably
I would
will.
like to show up, but also when I show up, I hijack trying to let the team do their own thing. So it's kind of hard because I show up and then I'm going. But yeah, Emma has given you everything you need. If you have any questions, or if you have questions specific to Worlds, Nash, who will be here next meeting. And like, you guys can discuss everything, turn the calendar, everything. That's good at what you discuss with them. Then you can bring it to the exec meeting, like hash out a plan for the semester.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We have like 15 to 20 minutes left, so we have options. I can keep talking about worlds because you guys seem to be more interested in worlds. We can do some practice for resolutional analysis, or you can ask questions. What do you guys want to do? You guys?
I'm just more interested in work because it's in general it's just quite more similar feel to World High School.
It is. It is.
It's just different the mechanism.
Yeah,
I'm like different the mechanism with the team.
Also, look out for, I think it's Pi Kappa Delta. It's a tournament. No, that's not prime, it's tournament. Where they have columns.
Yeah.
And we'll like make sure to add you so that Rashad knows to talk to you.
Yeah.
That man loves Congress.
Someone, I believe it was him, put in the Discord, like, there's someone who, like, talked about Congress at the meeting, apparently.
Yeah, no, Andrew pinged him and said, yeah, there's someone that talked about Congress.
Yeah, because, yeah. This is Congress, but with a partner, and...
It's more structured than Congress.
Yeah.
They force you to speak. And they pick your side.
Yeah, that's... in Congress, we would have two cases, and it would literally just be, you raise your hand for both half and egg, whatever one you...
Yeah.
Well, that's just because we had...
I didn't do that because I did it at regionals, but I didn't care. I just wanted to go to regionals so I'd have something to do in the morning before I did PM. And yeah, so yeah. This is like kind of easier than Congress. Kind of easier, kind of harder.
Is there a novice world?
Yeah. Not the tournament. But you can't go to that anyway. There is. We'll try to give information about it whenever it's true. Okay. This is what I was saying. And opening opposition and opening government should both be developing as much content as possible. Closing government and closing opposition wants to do rebuttals and extensions. Extensions are what I was talking about. I'm going to make this one go down to this because I think this is like the most helpful. They want to do the rebuttals and the extensions. You want to spend the first half of your speech doing a rebuttal for the member, and then the second half doing your extension. The whip speech, yeah, we already talked about this. Has to summarize the entire debate, context of your whip. Don't introduce new material. Member government can. Here's how the prep time. Use 30 minutes. This is how Vishnesh, who is really, really good at world schools, suggested that we use a prep time.
Okay.
You don't have to use your prep time this way, but he's really good. So this is some good advice. But if it doesn't work for you, no one's gonna make you do it. You spend 5 minutes brainstorming by yourself. Don't talk to your partner yet. You want to think about all the stakeholders that this debate applied to. So like everyone that this debate affects, think about it in like in each of their contexts, because then you can think of points that are relevant to them. If there's unclear terms in the motion, you want to define them, and you want to define how you're going to set up the motion. This isn't as important as idea. But if it's not exactly clear, like what something is, and you're going to run it a certain way, you need to make sure that you define it. And if you're the opposition, you can't really go against how the government defines it, because if you think about this as like actual parliament, this is definitely like actual parliament, but sometimes it's like, this only makes sense if it's actual parliament. If the government is passing a bill, or they're making an argument, and you're the opening opposition, and you're like opposing that bill, you wouldn't say, like, the way that you define this issue is bad. Well, I guess you could, but like, you know, it doesn't really make sense to talk about a different policy than the one that the government is talking about. And if you are closing government or closing opposition, you have to accept the way that the opening government and the opening opposition defined it. You have to. But you can spin it to your side. So it's
And this is all pen paper.
Okay, so UNG let us do this on our laptops. UNG is run by Tom Preston, who does whatever he wants. He's really cool, but he like lets everyone flow on a laptop, and I don't know if you actually can do tournaments or not. So I'm sorry, I don't know. You can either ask the judge before the round, or look at the tournament, or you can email the tournament.
Yeah, some projects email.
Like
yeah.
historically,
And
no. I guess, like at least for World High School, it's more of like, okay, what you know, because I think like if I mean,
So the
I know
setup
that this
is like,
also,
what should you know? The setup is what should you know, and what is the context.
exactly.
Yeah.
So this is like also like a lot tailored towards, I don't know, international affairs students, law students, you know, so somebody who's already knowledgeable about most of the topics that are talked about. But you know, with COVID and virtual, there is not really a way you can actually enforce these rules.
Yeah.
So some tournaments just say, we can't enforce it, might as well just say.
Might as well make it fair when some people are going to
exactly.
Sure.
Because like,
Congress,
it was literally, I would be editing my speech. Representative Smith said, this, I agree with them, and I expand on this.
Yeah, me writing my speech while opening, while the person who wrote the bill is.
I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah. I don't know what this is.
And then, or that's, like, what is it called? The very last speech, the whips. Those are, in Congress, they're called crystallization.
Yeah.
You talk about what everyone said in this round. That'll be very easy.
One other approach to do the reply speech in Word, which I find super cool, is we call them the approach of the two words. So basically, you say, okay, we propose our word. Our word things work this way, and you know, it's so much better. The opposition wants instead this word, you know? And you say,
that's
okay,
a great,
that's
a
a
great way. That's a great
like, I find that so effective.
And that is like, if you do that in IPDA, that's like really good writing.
Yeah.
But I know that you're more like inclined to roles.
I mean, I know.
You can also do both, but like, it's
fine. You probably watching some videos download and see which one is.
Also, we do scrimmages, and if you want to come watch the scrimmages, we will not stop you. Yeah, so you can definitely do that if you want to learn with us.
I'd probably do or watch at least one before I do the turn.
That's fine. Or you can also participate in the scrimmages, but like some people don't like doing that without like watching any.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we were saying, setup is what the government does. The opposition doesn't really need to set up. So they need to do fun. Then you get 5 minutes like sharing all your ideas. Make sure that one person like shares all their ideas. Don't interrupt them. Let them share all their ideas. And then the next person can share theirs. And then if an idea has already been brought up by the first person, there's no need to like bring it up to the second person once you've said that. But you're just giving ideas. It's just like brainstorming.
Yeah.
You're gonna do like 8 to 10 minutes talking about like what your definitions, what your setup is, and like figuring out how you're gonna run the case. 8 is like if you're opening. 10 is like if you're government, because then it matters. And then you want to spend like 10 minutes like putting all the points where they go, and putting all the cards where they go, and just organizing where your speech is, making sure that it's ready, making sure that everything is as fleshed out as you want. And then that's like
nice.
Some advice for communicating with your partner. One good thing is a drop sheet. So, for example, if you're the opening opposition, after prep time, you have your list of arguments. And
this is with your partner.
So while the deputy prime minister and the deputy leader of the opposition is trying to make their speeches, the leader of opposition has all of the arguments out there. And if the deputy prime minister drops arguments, then you put a check next to it. And then you show it. So while the deputy prime minister is speaking and the deputy leader of opposition is writing their speech, The leader of the opposition has a list of other arguments, and they have a list of everything that they said.
Yeah.
And then if the deputy prime minister doesn't have made a rebuttal against those arguments, then the leader of opposition, when they do make a okay, so if they drop an argument, you put a check next to the argument, and you give it to the deputy leader of opposition. So here's all the arguments that they dropped. You can say that they dropped all these arguments. And then they're like, okay, great. I'll spend time saying that they didn't respond to them.
So the list of arguments is coming from the other team. So the other team needs to their list of arguments. That's what it is.
So basically, whenever you give your speech, you know what arguments you make. You make a list of all the arguments that you said.
And you have to give that to the other team?
No, you don't.
Okay.
No, you don't. And then, so you have your list.
Okay.
While the deputy prime minister is speaking,
Which is the second
speaker of the government, the leader of opposition wants to look and see which arguments they drop.
Yep.
So which arguments they don't respond to, which arguments they don't give.
Okay.
And then it's okay, well they didn't make a rebuttal.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's
hey, deputy leader of opposition, in your speech you should say that they dropped these arguments, so you win. So you win. Yeah, because the deputy leader of opposition is multitasking, so they can't pay attention as much as the leader of opposition can, because the leader of opposition
It's done
to the entire debate.
You can make POI though. POIs are.
Yeah, they ask POIs, they see what's being dropped, do whatever they
That's
want.
pretty much their.
They have to add this, they have to have their partner.
Yeah, they're helping their partner. You can also do timestamps.
You can't move on.
So basically, if your partner is fumbling over their words and spending too much time on something, you can just make a note in the document, because sometimes you have shared document, or you have a note. It's you should move on. Try not to do this unless it's really bad, because it distracts them, kind of messes them up. But if it's kind of you can do that. Also, if you think that you did a bad job explaining something, you can say, hi, can you please explain more on this? The partner doesn't have to, because they also have a lot of content they have to cover. And it's better to explain something half than not explain something all. Basically, you should say, hey, if you have time, can you please dwell more on this? Because I did a bad job explaining it. And your partner can say, yeah, sure, I'll have time, or no, I have too much content, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
Either they get to decide, so don't. Then for their speeches, you start with your definitions and your setups. Then you want to do your rebuttal, then you want to do your case. At the timestamp 2:30. Oh, this is for closing. So for closing, what you want to do is you want to start with all the definitions and setup and review and talk about what you're talking about. Then you want to give your rebuttal of everything the other team said. You have a lot of content to talk about. Because at least a team, maybe one team plus one person, is gone. And then you do your extension. Halfway through your speech, you move on to your extension. Otherwise, you're not.
Yeah, would you even do case or close?
You have your extension.
Yeah.
That's your case.
Okay.
I think the hardest one is probably closing opposition.
Closing opposition.
Or
So closing opposition has a lot that they can. So okay. Like I said, it depends. If you're really good at making rebuttals, then closing opposition is easier than closing government. If you're really good at coming up with case points, then closing government.
Yeah, that's right.
I personally think that it's easier to make a lot of rebuttals against someone than to make a lot of points for the resolution. The closing opposition is low-key a little bit easier, especially because you can respond to what the closing government said, but the closing government has to go after only the opening opposition has gone. And the opening government has already responded to most of opening.
Yeah.
But I mean, it means your opinion is sure one is easier.
Yeah.
I can't say that one's objective. Okay. Do you guys have any questions?
No,
I'm going to this one. And go back to this. Change this real quick. That's not my fault, guys. Not that it matters.
International debate, Parli.
Yep. How to get involved. I just copied and pasted this on my original. If you guys aren't on the Discord and the group and everything, then you can join. If you are, good join. Do you need me to keep this up? No?
Good.
We don't have time for this. Okay. Do you guys have any questions? I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop sharing and stop recording.